So basically, starting off that on Wednesday, August 24th at 2:30 p.m., the operational staff had a meeting here at 591 conference room to talk about the necessary preparations that needed to be done in anticipation of Hurricane Irene. On Thursday, August 25th at 4 p.m., Governor Cuomo declared a state of emergency. And at 11 p.m. That same day, Mayor Bloomberg also declared a state of emergency in the city of New York. That resulted on Friday, August 26th at 11:45 a.m., RIOC implemented its incident command structure and opened up an incident command center in this very room at 591. And that was staffed by executive and senior staff from the corporation throughout the entire weekend. And the purpose was to prepare and monitor for the hurricane. RIOC, through the efforts of our community relations specialist, Erica Wilder, and also with Mike Moria to make sure the backbone of our telecommunications infrastructure were ready for the event. We used social media, the RIOC website, the RIOC advisories, emails, Facebook, and the old traditional way of communicating, leaflets, throughout the island to communicate the messages that we were receiving from OEM, the advisories from the mayor's office, and also advisories that we were putting out that pertain to things that happen here on Roosevelt Island, such as the closure of the F train. As you know, the MTA shut down the service at 12 o'clock Saturday afternoon, and other advisories that needed to be put forward. And that was communicated with extreme effort by the entire staff, but primarily by Erica and by Mike. That same day, on Friday, 3:30 p.m., the mayor declared evacuation of Zone A. As you know, RIOC resides within the Zone B. We were not evacuated. We had constant communications, not only during the event, but prior to the event with OEM, the Office of Emergency Management, through our key staff here, and also through the incident command structure that we had established in preparation for the event. Saturday, August 27th, as you know, the MTA shut down all public transportation service in New York City. Here on Roosevelt Island, we continued our service on the Roosevelt Island tram until 6 p.m. that evening, and we continued bus service until 8 p.m. that evening. The AVAC system, in particular, which you know the corporation owns, but is operated and maintained by the New York City Department of Sanitation. They purged the system to prevent any flooding. They purged the system from any debris that may be in there. They had staff around the clock. The system did not shut down, but they were prepared in the event of any flooding of the system, which is why they purged it. They wanted to clean it out to make sure nothing would happen if in case it flooded. But at no time did the AVAC system shut down. Speaking of things not shutting down, I received various emails and questions and phone calls and comments about the Roosevelt Island Bridge. As you know, the Roosevelt Island Bridge does not fall within the jurisdiction of the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. That falls within the jurisdiction of New York City Department of Transportation. We have a good relationship with the contractors. There's still remnants of the contractors around, but we also have a strong relationship with DOT. And at no time whatsoever, and again I stress, at no time whatsoever did the Roosevelt Island Bridge close. It was in operation the entire time. On Sunday, August 28th, after the worst of the storm left us, we started a cleanup effort to restore transportation service on Roosevelt Island. So at 1:30, we began testing of the Roosevelt Island tramway, and we started road clearing for the buses to move forward or move throughout the island. And we also did some remediation work over by the seawalls. By 2 p.m. that Sunday, the full public transportation for the island was back in service. We had limited service with the bus. We had a limited service with the tram, but we were in operation. And that's what I mean by full service. We were in operation. By Monday morning, we had normal operations, both at the tram and at the bus service. We had areas that were damaged by the hurricane and the high winds. Even after the storm left us, Sunday evening around 6 o'clock, you guys, since you guys are residents, probably experienced this, there was a gust of high winds. But we also had flooding as a result of the hurricane, or the tropical storm. As you can see by the pictures to my right, we had damages over at Lighthouse Park, to our seawall. In this upper picture, we had flooding over by Lighthouse Park, so basically this whole area was flooded in by the storm surge. We had the East River basically rise up. There's a good picture right here, where you can see the picture of the East River basically rising up to the top of the seawall, which is if you look at it from the riprap, it's probably 8 feet of bulkhead. So we had a significant event over there. That's the area, and you can see by the barbecue grills, we also had flooding, as well as trees that were down at Lighthouse Park. We have contractors up there now cleaning up. I'm proud to say that the park will be open this weekend in time for Labor Day, so that people can enjoy hopefully a nice sunny and pleasant day on Monday. But we had significant tree damage. Island-wide, we had approximately 23 trees down, and the potential of other trees as well. Our ground staff, as well as our contractors and our engineering staff, are assessing the damages or potential damage of trees in the future, in terms of, because of the saturation of the soil, of it possibly topping over, or potential branches falling off the tree limbs as well. I have to stress, and you guys can also relay this level of stress to your readers, that when we put out an advisory, when we caution off an area, it's because there's a reason. There's a significant reason. We don't want any harm to happen to the residents or visitors of Roosevelt Island, and we don't want any harm to our people, our public safety staff that would have to go rescue them, or our engineering staff in any way to go rescue anyone because they're doing something that's foolish. As you can see, and we had, actually this happened, public safety responded because there was someone walking on the top of the seawall. Yeah. That person would have fallen off, it would have been swept, that person would have swept away in the East River.
It's funny, I just did a note because you wanted to be a little informal here, but I sent Keith a photo. I was out Sunday wandering around, where trees fell down by the baseball park there. One of Keith's officers, there's 3 of them actually, it turned out, were really doing a very commendable professional job keeping people back. Right. But they were actually giving the officers a hard time. Yes. She was trying to keep them away from the fallen trees. It was very remarkable what the public will do.
We have a lot of responsibilities here, and in that too, we're concerned about the health and safety of the people who are here. When they set foot on this island, that's our primary concern, and that's the primary focus of the Public Safety Department. And it's an ongoing issue that we have with public safety and people who don't recognize the effort.
There's a guy with children, actually.
Exactly. It's foolish. It's just, the bottom line is foolish.
Yeah,
and it's not a good example. It's not a good example for that parent to set to the children.
When was the person on the seawall? Was that during the hurricane? I mean, that was.
When was that? That was Saturday.
Sunday morning.
Sunday
morning. Around the time of the high tide.
Sunday morning. So, I know people, there are adventure seekers out there, but it's not the smart thing to do. And people have to respect the authority figure. They also have to respect what we're putting out there in terms of our message. They also have to respect the symbols that we're putting out there in the caution tape. Do not cross. It's out there for a reason. We put out an advisory that the parks are closed. They're closed for a reason. So, but I just want to conclude by saying that we had a constant line of communication with OEM throughout the entire time, prior to the event, during the event, and even post-event. But I can't take credit unless I tell folks what credit is really due, and that's to the people in this room and the people that report to them. They left their personal property, they left their homes, they left their families to come here. They spent the entire weekend here. Even when they weren't supposed to report to work, they were here. Or if they had to report to work, they were here early, hours early, because they knew they were not going to have public transportation. And it's a job that they did without any type of order. They did it because they knew their obligation to their job. And I want to thank the staff and the people that had those departments, but they did a fantastic job. In particular, people in this room, Armando, Mike, Steve, Erica, Robert, Renee, Keith, Cy, Vargas, everyone contributed. It was a full team effort. And they demonstrated their leadership, and that was felt throughout the entire corporation. And I just wanted, for the record, say thank you. So, at this time, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Yeah, just to throw us in context, I know you're not responsible for evacuation procedures, you coordinate with the city and all that. But on the subways were announced closed down. Now, the announcement was on Friday, it's closed on Saturday. On Friday, in the news stories, as it talked about how the development of the hurricane was going, some meteorologists thought there was a chance the hurricane would increase in strength as it moved toward New York after it bounced off the Carolinas because of the way the wall was developed and so on and so forth. If it developed enough to require an evacuation of Roosevelt Island, and or something, it could be another situation, is there a practical evacuation plan? It seems like Roosevelt Island poses problems that are almost unimaginable, with one street and the bridge. And but is there, in fact, a plan? And I know you have to keep somewhat quiet about it because of security reasons, but is there a plan?
OEM has a plan for a Zone B, and we fall under Zone B. And if Roosevelt Island were to be evacuated, that plan would be implemented, and we would provide the necessary assistance and resources to facilitate that plan.
Are you familiar with the plan?
Yes.
Does it involve subways?
Subways? Well, here's the thing.
Subways closed.
Subways closed.
I'm curious.
Right. When the mayor provides enough notification, okay? It's not something that happens from 1 second to the next. If the order is given to evacuate, and the mayor provided the order to evacuate of Zone A on Thursday, it's a self-evacuation. People are supposed to use the necessary resources, their personal vehicles, the public transportation, the buses, and so on, to self-evacuate. If Zone B were to be evacuated, it would be the same thing, but we would have enough notification for folks to self-evacuate.
It almost seemed like, excuse me for going back on this, because it seems like there's a real risk involved, and we got lucky. If the storm, once the announcement was made, the subways were closed on Saturday, if the storm had intensified, instead of become weaker, all there was the bridge for get 12 to 14,000 people off the island, including the hospitals. Do you think that's a reasonable assumption they could have done that?
Repeat the question.
If the storm had strengthened, you suddenly realized this noon on Saturday, it's becoming stronger, and you probably would not have found it that fast. That's being generous. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, OEM decides you have to evacuate Roosevelt Island. Is there some conceivable way that the island could have been evacuated in reasonable fashion? I just from my own personal experience, at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I noticed a sign that was taped to a wall near our elevation. A lot of people got downstairs and couldn't see it. That said, Mayor Bloomberg asks that people that we tell people to above the 10th floor to evacuate to a lower floor. Didn't say where. Didn't mention any evacuation center of any kind, or what lower floor that might be. And if you didn't lie, you wouldn't see it at all. But assume people would decide, well, I don't have any place to go, I want to go to the evacuation center, that information wasn't there. And the only way to get there would have been to walk across the bridge in the rain and the rain. That's it.
Mhm.
So is it, it was a pretty elaborate pre-question, but is there a reasonable assumption that there is an evacuation plan that's practical to get people off the island on a very short notice? I realize it's not your
The key
responsibility.
factor to that is having enough notification, okay?
Of course.
To evacuate the number of people in any location, whether it's Roosevelt Island or the Rockaways or Lower Manhattan, whatever it may be, you know, you can't hurt people out in a short period of time. The proper thing to do is like the mayor and the governor did do, is to provide enough notification. If they felt, and maybe they were overly conservative, but if they felt that the tropical storm, which we ended up with, was a Category 1 or a Category 2 that would have yielded an evacuation of Zone B, they would have done so with enough time to do the proper evacuation of
All right,
the
now,
island.
let me take the scenario a little differently then, because I don't think they could have possibly done that once they ordered the subways down from noon on Saturday. The storm strengthened, they didn't have time to notify.
To answer your question, in order to make the executive decision, and I'm not part of that conversation,
Right, I know.
okay? The only thing I can control is when we shut down the tram and when we shut down the buses, okay? And we felt confident enough that we could operate the tram past, up until 6 o'clock. If we needed to, and we did that, we probably could have operated later. Just as a point of information and fact, during the snowstorm, day after Christmas, we had no shutdown of the tram. We operated it in high winds, exceeding 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on, Steve. So we operated in high winds, okay? If push comes to shove, yes, we can operate, okay? Is it the precautious thing to do? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But if we have to, we can possibly do it, and we can provide transportation. But in the decision that was made by the mayor to shut down his entire public transportation system, which is very complex. And I worked for the MTA for 4 years, so I know how complex it is. It's not just the subways and buses. They shut down Long Island Railroad, they shut down Metro North, they shut down everything. We were here, which is why people showed up to work before 12 o'clock, even though they may have had a 11 o'clock p.m. shift. We were here, but the decision that, knowing probably, and again, I'm not a witness to this, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall, but in order to shut down at 12 o'clock, I'm sure they were confident enough that that time was good to shut down the tram based on the information they got. If they felt that the storm is still unpredictable, that, it may be a tropical storm, it may be a Category 2, it may be a Category 1, they would have said, you know what, maybe we run it a little bit longer and tell people, get out. But that's just my opinion, I wasn't there.
Yeah, and I hate to make it look as putting RIOC online, because you guys aren't responsible for it, I understand that. Did you want to say something? Because I want to rephrase the question.
But
I was just going to say, though, like Rockaways were evacuated, Zone B, it's basically one bridge. People are self-evacuated. We had extra bus drivers here in case we had to evacuate to assist OEM. We have 7 buses. People have cars here. They have to get off the island. So, I mean, a lot of areas in Manhattan, out in Long Island, they were evacuated, a lot more people than 14,000 people, a lot more people. And it happened pretty easily. Some
You
people
think that's
chose.
sure? And the reason
I mean, a lot of people chose not, some people chose not to leave or whatever, that's their prerogative. But we had contingency to help OEM. I'm sure, we don't know the exact plans, they would have had some buses, but there's a bridge here also that people could go and evacuate.
But basically, to answer your question, David, is, practically speaking, it's the decisions were made, and I think they were made appropriately, both in this corporation and then in the city and the state at large, to provide for the health and safety of its citizens.
Right.
How much time is necessary to evacuate Roosevelt Island if you had to do that? Do you know that?
It's hard to say.
Is it 8 hours? Is it 12 hours?
We don't know the
Yeah.
exact, we'll have to get it from OEM. We don't
Would
know,
they-
it's beyond us to figure, you know, the exact.
But somebody
But,
you know,
presumably
but-
knows.
But,
Well,
Rick,
they, you know, they
wait,
estimate.
hold on, Steve. We don't have an exact number, but let's look at 4th of July as an example. You know, it takes us time to evacuate the island. Island has a surge of people when we had 4th of July here for the fireworks.
Yeah.
It takes time. You know, to say how long it's gonna take, you know, it's on an individual basis. It's not an exact science. And that's why enough notification is provided days in advance before the actual event to give people ample time. So to lock it down to a specific time, you know, I don't think anyone is gonna commit to that.
Sounds like it's almost ad hoc, depending on the circumstance when it comes out.
Right.
But let me rephrase a little bit. The way I would look at it is, so we saw a hurricane, and it sounds like the mayor and the Office of Emergency Management decided on Thursday or so that there's no way this thing's gonna, no matter what happens, it's not gonna ramp up to a Category 3 or 4 when it hits New York.
Mhm.
So Zone B is almost certainly not in danger. That sounds like an idea they had. So, but and that may be right, although meteorologists on Saturday, we're not thinking that way. But on the other hand, New York Times might be gaining the story also. But assume it's something different. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Nobody expected September 11th or the blackout or any of those things. Say something abrupt happens on Roosevelt Island. Plane crashes in the middle of the island. The Ravenswood plant blows up. When is that? Is there an established plan to get people out fast? And how do you get 14,000 people, including hospital residents, out in very short order? And I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's a plan. I really don't think there's a plan. I think you guys did a tremendous job of stepping up and doing everything you could within this area. But I think OEM left you hanging. I think OEM's got you hanging on a stick. I don't think there's no plan, and they're just like,
Well, you're saying that,
Well-
but you know,
Well,
it's easy to make that statement, but we'll ask for.
I don't see a plan.
It depends on what the situation is. If the subways are running, the tram is running, if there's a fire, if there's something, it's always
The
depends
reason you
on
make
what
an
the
emergency
situation.
plan, Steve, is because you don't have time to sit down and take meetings and make those
You're saying
decisions.
that
You
you
have to
don't
have a
think
plan.
there is-
David, hold on, let's focus, okay? Let's just,
You're assuming there isn't a plan.
hold on, Steve, okay? Let's just
Okay.
not go back and forth on this, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, if, you can't predict every single event, okay? Just like there are no two snowflakes that are the same, okay? You can quote me on that. I've been using that a couple times already.
I got it.
All right? So we learn from this event, just like we've learned from previous events, and then we're prepared. But we just don't know what's going to happen in the future. We have a strong line of communication with OEM, with the tram in particular, and everything that is involved with the tram. We have a strong line of communication with the mayor's office, NYPD, FDNY, OEM. Those lines of communications are strong. They're solid. They're rock solid. Okay? We're working together. And if something happened that caused us to provide some type of level of action, we'll be working in concert with OEM. Again, we can't predict anything that can happen. We can only, but we're prepared, just like we were prepared for this event.
My understanding is that there is some type of evacuation plan that Frank Ferrance and Matt Katz were able to see, but they had to sign some kind of non-disclosure agreement regarding
I'm not
that.
familiar with what they saw. They never mentioned anything to me about this. I can't really speak to that.
Okay, all right, so going on to another subject. The damage on Roosevelt Island, is it basically limited to the trees? Is there any infrastructure damage regarding the underground pipes other than the AVAC, which you said there was no damage?
In terms of the island infrastructure, the engineering department had the foresight to clean out the storm drains. Okay, so that way, and which they do on a regular basis, but they checked it, and if they found debris in there, they removed it, so that way, if we did have flooding, it would wash out to the east river the way normal is supposed to do. Okay, so luckily, we did that, and we did that very quickly, and we did it early enough in the event. We did suffer damage with the seawall. The seawall is a constant issue for us, and that's something that we have to address. okay? As you can see from the pictures, there were chunks of it that were ripped away by the storm surge. The trees, I don't have an exact count of how many trees we have on the island in total, but because of what happened with the hurricane, we lost 23 trees. And we have a contractor who's licensed and certified by the city of New York, not just to remove trees, because we did a lot of that work ourselves and cut down trees, but because of the Asian longhorn beetle, we have to follow a process. So we contracted someone that's certified by the city to be able to dispose of the trees if we need to dispose it off island. And that work is being done right now. As I mentioned, Lighthouse Park will be opened up by this weekend. That's the area that suffered the most flooding, the most damage to the seawall, and we're in a recovery phase right now. And in the recovery phase, we're doing cleanup, we're doing mitigation, we're also preparing for the future as well. And that's going to be a constant process that we go through.
What are you doing to prepare for the future?
Well, we had a debriefing already this week. We're going to have others. We're going to see, okay, what were the lessons learned from the Cpap? And there's always something to be learned. So what were the lessons learned? Because again, no two snowflakes are the same. So what we learned from the previous event we applied now, but then we learned new things, and that's what we have to discuss internally, and then so that we're better prepared. It's a constant evolution, it's a constant cycle that we have to go through, that we have been going through prior to the event, not just last week, but even a year ago and so on, and it's something that we constantly do.
Can you be specific, though, as to 2 items that you think you need to improve?
Here's a simple one. Like I said, we had 23 trees cut down. Some of the trees were significant in size. We didn't have chainsaws that can cut down those trees. So we had to purchase, before we even had a contractor on board, because we had trees that fell on the roadways or on the seawall and blocked passage, okay? We didn't have the proper size chainsaw. We have chainsaws, but we didn't have the proper size. We had to go purchase proper size chainsaw so we can open up the arteries here. So that's basic, simple example that comes to mind right away.
Is there another one?
I'm sure there will be, but I gotta think about it, but we could be here all day.
What are we considering, a follow-up thing, you said that you weren't aware of what, we know from Frank and Matt, Frank Ferrance and Matt Katz, and Howard Polivy also, that there was plans that were in place back when there was a pretty big, a little bit of a firestorm about an emergency plan in Roosevelt Island back in 2005. And some plans were definitely developed, and I think it was from OEM working with you guys. And they were allowed to see them, they had to sign non-disclosures, probably for security reasons. But you were saying you don't know what they saw. Were you saying you don't know what they saw, or you don't know those plans?
I don't know. I can't speak to what they saw.
You know there are plans. You just don't know what they saw.
I don't know what they saw. I can't. I wasn't there.
Yeah,
so
I just wanted to clarify. That's what I thought you were saying.
I can't speak to what they saw. I don't know what they signed. I don't know what they saw. I can't really comment.
That was before your time, right?
It was before my time.
Well,
We're talking about.
But there are certain plans. You just got it. I understand. I want to be clear.
Let's talk about post 2007 when I joined.
Were there any public safety incidents that occurred during?
Public safety incidents.
Were there any?
Except that we had people that again breached the areas that they shouldn't have breached. We had caution tape, we had park closures, we had advisories notifying people about that, and we still had those people not paying attention or respecting the authority of the corporation or the officer, and not following what was mandated.
Were there any incidents?
No robberies, nothing out of the ordinary, no.
So nothing specifically, no one took advantage of the hurricane?
No.
Okay, that's good. What about the problem with the phones? Was that it was a Verizon problem?
I have to commend Mike Mario and the IT department. They did, again, a spectacular job, because that was our lifeline here in terms of being able to communicate with the outside. We wrote the messages, we reviewed it, but it would be meaningless if we couldn't deliver that message. And Mike Mario, through his staff and his team, prepared everything that needed to happen in terms of making sure things were in place in terms of our telecommunication infrastructure. Now, we did have telecommunication failure, but that was beyond our control. That was Verizon's issue. Mike Mario was in communication with Verizon. They had other issues as well that had to deal with citywide because it wasn't just isolated to Roosevelt Island. But Mike's team, as you know, we lost telecommunications and public safety. But we did not lose internet service here in our command center. That was always in place. But we did lose telecommunications and public safety. But Mike was able to come up with a plan B, and we restored limited service via cell phone if anyone had an emergency needed to communicate with public safety.
So are there any lessons learned for the next time something like this happens in terms of backup systems or?
Like I said, there are always lessons to be learned, and we're taking that into account. We're meeting. We've met. We're going to meet again, and we're going to document. We've been documenting throughout the entire time, and then we're going to come up to see how we can improve on things.
I got a what if question. It's probably maybe highly unfair, but I'm sure you'll have a reasonable answer. So, and Zone B had been required for evacuation. They really saw some of these areas for a flood, and given the fact that even a Category 1 storm flooded the north end of the island and did some damage, are there any provisions that were made for saving the infrastructure of buildings with heating equipment and things like that in the basements?
The buildings, which buildings are you talking about?
Buildings that have heating equipment, electric distribution, and things like that in the basements.
You talking about residential buildings, or are you talking about RIOC facilities?
Residential, highly.
Well, that would be the preparation that needed to be taken by the property managers of those respective buildings.
All right, so we wouldn't.
We don't have jurisdiction over
that.
That wouldn't fall on us. We just as us, we have facilities that we have to maintain: sports park, the bus garage, this building, or at least this part of the building here. We're responsible for that, and we did what we had to do to prepare for that. We had sandbags as a very, very basic way to do it, and we had power generators as well.
We purchased plywood on Friday just in case.
Right.
So you were ready to help them out if it did come to something like that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, for our
Right.
facilities.
It's hard to stop an ocean with sandbags, but I know what you mean.
You know, the wind, this is really the
Hopefully the
wind.
buildings have some provisions of their own
Right.
to take care of
I'm
situations.
sure they all do.
Or once every 100 years, we get a
Right.
Category 2 storm.
The bottom line, and I can't stress this enough, we have an experienced team, and we will prepare. And we will be prepared again if something should happen.
Is there a cost estimate as to the damage caused to
We're
Roosevelt?
working on that now. Mr. Sharonis and the finance department are gathering all the timesheets and expenses and so on, and they're developing and consolidating that now.
Any damage to the smallpox hospital?
You know, it's amazing, because as you can recall, back in December of 2007, the north wall of the smallpox hospital collapsed, and we spent a considerable amount of money shoring up that facility. The entire site, not just the smallpox hospital, but the South Point Park, as well as the Four Freedoms Park, nothing.
Open Tuesday.
Open Tuesday was the first park that we opened up.
Open
Open Tuesday. The only thing that they had was just debris that just washed up, and we cleaned that up. And open Tuesday, absolutely right.
On the southern tip, was there any,
None.
why would it not be on the southern tip but by Lighthouse Park?
Because the north came from the north to the south of them. Counterclockwise. So the wind came from the north and the east, and you can see how the trees fell.
No,
And the west side was basically protected, and the south.
Yeah, I slept with my windows open that night. Didn't even rattle the Venetian blinds. That was amazing. To go and see these people, directing people on these huge trees that fell. Never guessed it was like that.
Where the eye hit and came this way.
Was there any damage to the homes of the RIOC employees that had to come here to work and leave their own homes?
We're obviously concerned about. We're obviously concerned about we're obviously concerned about the personal property of our staff and so on, and rather than just get into what they experienced, that's their personal issue, and they're addressing that.
Well, it's just that they sacrificed.
Yes,
to-
they
so I think that's-
sacrificed, and people showed up to work on Monday here.
Mhm.
Absolutely, we were open for business on Monday. I'm sure folks experienced damage, and some folks did not, but that's a personal question.
Okay.
Just know, I don't know how much it affects anything you do, but as we look at different retail things for the island, on Saturday morning, long before it got to be a storm. The out of Roosevelt Island managed businesses like Starbucks and the sports bar closed. Beautiful Saturday morning, closed tight. Couldn't get a service. Couldn't buy a cup of coffee. On-island services, Trellis, the farmer's market actually was open.
Right,
People were
I
running.
saw that.
So it seems like
As well as the Bar and Grill. The Riverwalk Bar and Grill was also open.
We had a hurricane party.
It seems that there's I don't know if it's a real issue there, but it was really noticeable, and it occurred to me at that time as we were looking at new retail outlets down, and I don't think you're deeply involved in that, you're probably glad you're not, that island-owned businesses have a distinct advantage for an isolated place like this. When things get shut down, if people are from off the island and are responsible for things, they ain't coming. And they didn't. It was Saturday morning, it was beautiful weather, it was gorgeous, closed.
Well, they have to come from the subway, and the subway was closed, so they have to care.
From the subway, the farmer's market was open.
All right.
Any issue with the red buses? Any damage to the buses, to the garage?
buses. Sign, his guys did a fantastic job shoring things up, as well as the tram, as well. Armando, yeah, I can't say enough about Armando as well. His 19 years of experience here. You thought he would have seen it all, but he's always learning as well. But Sign, Armando, and everyone else, they again did everything that they needed to do to make sure our property was protected so that we can resume service. And the fact that we restored service the next day is a testament to the preparation that led to what we did here and their experience and expertise.
Why wasn't the president of the corporation here?
It's she's away right now. She's on vacation. You can't base a vacation on something that's unknown. So August is always a slow month, and she's on vacation right now. She's returning, as a matter of fact, today. But she was in constant communication with myself and Mr. Sharonis and the rest of the corporation. So she's away right now, and she had constant communication with
Did
us.
she have to fly?
She did have to fly.
She had a hard time.
Or she left before.
I'll just-
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of the problems with some of the problems with the tree damage are being reported by residents through the C-Click Fix system. Is that being monitored by?
Yes, it is, absolutely. We've been monitoring it prior to that, and the C-Click Fix, actually, let's call it RI311. Let's just make sure we keep the RI311, which is powered by C-Click Fix, the organization that provides that service to us. Basically beefed up service. Eric, I don't know if you want to speak to that effect, in terms of they anticipated that we would get a lot of hits through RI311, and they were in constant communication with Erica and myself in terms of monitoring the activity through RI311.
So
And we had gotten a lot of responses. We also received, because of the advisories, and again, this is a testament to the infrastructure that we put in place, the telecommunication infrastructure, the advisories that we put out that were set up by Erica and her team and public safety and IT and so on, Mike and Keith and Renee. We received a surge in terms of people signing up for the advisories and also the Facebook. People looked at the different ways that we were communicating to the outside as a way to find out what needed to happen or what was done.
Does anyone else want to recount like a personal
Do you
story?
have any more questions?
I might, based upon a personal story. Does anyone have a personal story as to what they were doing during?
Well, I think I elaborated everything that we did here, and again in preparation and then during the event. And these guys did yeoman's work in terms of what needed to be done to secure this island and to provide, to mitigate any risk to property, personal property or RIOC property, or risk to people here on the island. They were here throughout the entire time, and it was a complete team effort, and I recognize that, and I'm proud of them, and they really stepped up. And we all have our personal experiences, but we'll be here all day as well. But if you have any specific questions, we can just finish up.
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Answered everything as thoroughly and honestly as you could, and
Okay.
we know the going man's mind.
Okay. Great.
I'm done.